Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelove, and this is Mayan Speedplay number 32. Sorry for the slight delay on this episode, there's been quite a lot going on. We come back with the Commonwealth declaring us a rival, which is unfortunate because they were about to be friendly with us again, or they were, but now they're rivals, that's unfortunate. We are still charging through the Ottomans. Their army is still powerful, but not nearly so powerful as the combined weight of men that we can just bring against them, hence we control so much of their countryside. And really, at this point, there isn't very much that they can do. The war is essentially over. It's just us grinding them slowly further away. Honestly, at this point, I can't really see any function that continuing the war would serve to the Ottoman state. However, obviously, since it's an AI, you can't really just sort of program that knowledge into them, and thus the war is going to keep fighting beyond any point of really continued relevance or significance, or really any gain that they could hope to make. So we do just kind of march around surrounding their armies and sieging out their fortresses and various territories. And hopefully they attack us right now, hopefully we'll just win that battle. We don't even have the majority of our forces in the area next to their army anymore, since it just seemed like we would win. Now I assumed they would retreat to Karaman, however it looks as though they're retreating much, much farther than that. So it looks as though we're just going to have to chase them down, and maybe we'll get lucky with destroying their army, but more likely than not we can just kind of block them off. It does look as though they have quite a bit of land in Persia, and I don't really want to follow them down there, as that opens up an entirely new portion of the war. What we will do instead is more or less cling back. It looks like they do have an army rolling on up. We can't get there before them, so we're just going to move a province further west, hopefully block them off there. It looks as though they are going to meet us, but I do believe we'll get there first, and we do, which is great. So we send another group of reinforcements. We don't actually need to, as it looks as though we're just going to win. We do go ahead and win a naval battle, which is very significant. That's really the one thing they had going for them. However, we did finish building up a much more significantly powerful navy. Now we're splitting our forces up to just siege out the fortless countryside of Anatolia. We're getting their capital. Hopefully as soon as their capital falls, they'll be willing and ready to surrender. Otherwise, we can just keep doing what we've been doing. And it looks as though they will accept our peace deal. We go ahead and take over quite a bit of land, knocking them back into Anatolia. They do have a bit of Syria, but, it's not really all that significant. Now we're going to have to take a moment to just get all of our troops out. We're also going to release Greece as a sovereign entity. Well, semi-sovereign. They're a vassal of ours. And what we're going to do, since we can only have, I believe, one more vassal and or ally, first of all, we're going to just feed Tunis the rest of North Africa. The main reason for that just being we don't really need North Africa, and we do lower Tunis's liberty desire somewhat with every province that we grant them. Admittedly, it's in the long term not going to be all that helpful. However, they do get a debuff to relations because they're over 300 development, and I believe the next debuff is at 1,000, although it's a significant debuff at that point. What we're going to do is just give them really all the lands they can take. We're going to try to hold the Suez Canal zone to ourselves, but besides that, there's really not all that much that needs doing. We do grant them all of these territories, and we do have the option of switching them back to our religious group, which will give them just tons of instability and make them just kind of a failed state for a few years. But we're going to go ahead and do that. Now back to Greece, though. What we need to do is grant them all of the rest of these territories we own. Since Tunis is so large, and that was a very vague statement, but all the rest of the territories that we own and control that we just took in this war. We do end up giving them Cyprus and Rhodes just as little bridging areas so they can actually take these territories, and we're just going to give them quite a bit. Eventually we may end up forming, or we can't form them because they are our vassal, but some sort of Byzantine Greek state, although they are going to be our religion, and also have a member of our dynasty on their throne. Although really, why even make vassals if you don't do that? So they do kind of hate us, as is natural, although we did end up usurping the Greeks and Greek civilization in the process, so why even be upset? Alright, so we're getting all of our troops. We're going to try to funnel them over to India. Tunis is getting rebels. That problem is going to just become horrible over the next few years, as they are just not religiously unified whatsoever. Hopefully they picked up humanist, otherwise it's going to be a really brutal series of, well, just a very brutal time for Tunis, as they're going to be essentially in a perpetual civil war, which in a kind of Machiavellian sense really suits us. Speaking of civil wars, unfortunately the Brazilians just rose up and we didn't have our forts on, so they're probably going to take one of those, which is terribly inconvenient. That being said, though, in a Machiavellian sense, Tunis basically breaking up forever is going to be a kind of good thing for us, since it means they won't feasibly be able to rebel against our rule, so we'll probably just station 1 or 2 armies in their lands and just use our forces to suppress their people until inevitably the state either reforms or collapses. But so long as we have troops, it won't collapse. So maybe if we're lucky before 1821, Tunis will reform into a semi-stable state, and by that point, all of the debuffs to relations from us forcing our religion and a member of our dynasty on their throne will hopefully have subsided. So it's basically, we're going to help Tunis up, but we're going to do it on our own terms, once they've gotten comfortable with the thought of being subservient to us. Which is a little terribly brutal, and we're kind of condemning a country to something like 40 years of civil war. But, yeah. There's some weird, rough allegories or allusions in between that and the current state of the world, but I'm not going to delve too deeply into those since it is just kind of an offhand theory. Anyway, feel free to read into that if you'd like. We do go ahead and worry about a few revolts potentially on some islands. Tunis definitely having rebel problems. We're going to try to just attack Vijayanagar, since we are allied to Bengal. Now, Tunis is pretty much going to break apart, but we want to at least get a foothold in India before we do anything else. And we do have somewhat considerable forces free and ready, although we are going to have to send some up to the Suez Canal zone, not although there is no Suez Canal at the moment. And there probably won't be by the end of the game, although we do have a decent amount of time to build up money. We do also have a decent amount of things to expend our money on. We do go ahead and beat them before they take control over the province, which is fantastic news. We can also start converting some Sunni territories, which we may do. And we're probably just going to raise a troop over in that 3rd province. We don't really need it, but Tunis couldn't handle it all at once. And send forces over to Vijayanagar. We are at peace for a moment, which is quite nice. So once we take that province back, we might be able to give it to Tunis, or we might have to wait until the end of the Vijayanagar War, which is moments away from happening. If we declare it quickly, we might be able to trap that one army group on Ceylon. So we do declare it, and we do charge our armies over. However, it looks as though they are just gunning it off the island so as not to be trapped. Luckily, we aren't already committed to sending troops there, so we just send them around. We don't trap any of their armies, which is sad and unfortunate. However, we also didn't get bogged down in some sort of really brutal contested landing against a stronger force. So, there's a give and a take to that. Also, hopefully Bengal is going to absorb the majority of their forces. We are continuing to colonize, which I just realized we haven't been doing all that much of this episode, comparatively. We do move up to take over some fortresses. We are kind of dispersed, and they have a very significant army. Luckily, we do have eyes on it, and hopefully they'll focus more on their center and staving off any Bengalian, Bangladeshian. Hopefully our ally will distract them, is what I'm driving at. And it looks as though they are bringing some forces relatively close to us, nowhere near the size of the force that we saw up in the north. They are going to try to attack us right now, which is... Oh, apparently they're not, but we're going to just rush over and attack them, since, hey, we have the opportunity. And now they have 2 separate and distinct forces, which we can just charge against. We did take some losses, but they did lose both battles. So that's pretty decent. We are also sieging out their territories with something compared to ease. Luckily, Bengal really is doing a lot to distract them. We are also sieging out Brazil, although it is, that Brazilian fort, although it's going slowly. And we're going to just try to annex Brazil, maybe take a break on this whole Vijayanagar war and slow down our advance. Bengal is attacking, and it looks like they may or may not succeed up there. If we did support them, they probably would succeed, doubtlessly. We don't, though, so they lose that. We are going to go ahead and, first of all, turn on our forts, because we've learned from the rebels how tedious that can be. and declare war on Brazil, which we already did. Now we're going to rush back, and it looks like we won against their army. We're going to just try to chase them down. And yeah, hopefully we'll get that all resolved pretty quickly. I just do not at all want Brazil to continue to exist and potentially join another coalition against us and then turn into another brutal coalition war in which we don't really gain anything despite a lot of fighting on multiple fronts. So, back to Vigilantigar. As you see, we are just kind of winning. We are pulling some forces over to go back into the Suez Canal-ish zone, since it looks as though a rebellion may be imminently about to break out. More colonial efforts. We have a bunch of armies waiting around so that natives don't destroy everything. And we might use the money that we would have been able to save to get the Suez Canal, spend it just on extra colonists so that we actually do manage to finish the colonization of at least South and hopefully part or all of North America. Tunis is definitely going through its just collapse period, so hopefully we'll be able to bring this war against Vigilantigar to a swift-ish conclusion. We do have a decent enough force to just start smashing through the Greek rebels, and hopefully we'll be able to just clean that whole area up. Brazil, we can finally annex, making us once and for all the only state in the Americas, which is a pretty pleasant shift. There are a bunch of rebel forces and whatnot in Vigilantigar. We do also have our armies which are being attacked. However, it looks as though we're going to hold it off with something related to ease, although not really so much. And, alright, so we can still be winning these battles. We had to fight Vigilantigarian forces, basically. And at this point, we might just try to make peace. We didn't call Bengal in with the promise of provinces, although it might be nice to just give them some, just to calm them down a bit and make sure that they appreciate this whole war and whatnot. From there, we do go ahead and just make peace. The important thing is we also have to give that province up to Tunis so we're not overextension. You'll notice we would have been at like 103%, now it's 96%. And alright, for probably the next episode in its entirety, we're going to, I assume, although we haven't gotten that far ahead yet, more likely than not be dealing with the potential revolutions in Tunis and also really ramping up colonization in order to get that resolved. Hopefully that won't last until the end of the game, but thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day, and I'm so very sorry that this took so long to get out. Hopefully we're going to be back to more consistent releases now.